We're on Exodus 21 tonight. Laws to direct judges. The next 2 or 3 chapters that we're going to have are going to be on laws and different types. We already went over the 10 commandments. Now this is to help. Okay, remember Jethro's father-in-law? Moses' father-in-law, Jethro. I'll get it right in a minute. Yeah.
I knew what he was saying.
He said, hey, you need to have some people helping you. So Moses set up judges that were over tens, over thousands, over hundreds. And this couple of 3 chapters that we're going to be going over in the next one is to help those judges, to give them a little bit more clarity on what those 10 commandments gave. All right? So Exodus 21:1 says, these are the judgments. Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. Now it's talking here again about what's going to happen. These particular laws, or the clarification of these laws, deal with employment, as far as treatment of the slaves, murder, manslaughter, violent assault, liability for animals, or for one's animals, theft, responsibility, rape, dowry, value of woman, idolatry, sorcery, treatment of disadvantaged people in society, money and property lending, justice, and equal standing before the law. One of the things that I read just yesterday in another email, when our founding fathers started looking, they looked towards the 10 Commandments to set up the Constitution. When Israel came back from Nebuchadnezzar and over in their slavery, when they were taken captive, they had Ezra, the prophet, read them the laws of Deuteronomy. And they set up the laws again, okay, because they had gotten so far away from them. So these are set up, these particular ones are set up for the justice and prudence of humanity, okay? Some of these things we read, as you just go and read through the verses, you'd think, wow, that's bad. But you need to know the meanings behind them, okay? Exodus 21:2-4, I'll read it first. If thou buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master hath given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. Before in Egypt, they were slaves. All of them were, more or less. Some hire slaves, because here again, the Egyptians were smart. They had to have some rulers and people to enforce what was happening, because the Israel people, Israelis, the Jews, they were a lot of people. And the Egyptians really didn't want to deal with them. They just wanted to get their work out of them. So they made some of the Israelites slave masters over them. They would make them over this particular one. They would do this, they would do that. So because of that, sometimes they may mistreat them. They would see how the Egyptians would mistreat themselves, as they were slave masters, and they would get that's the way that they were to be treated. And they may have mistreated some of their brethren. We don't know for sure exactly, but that's what Moses may have seen when he first seen the Egyptian beaten or fighting with the Israelite, and he killed the Egyptian. Then the next day it was 2 Israelis fighting, 2 Jewish people fighting, and he had already heard about it. He could have said that, well, that was the way they were being mistreated. It may have been that they were one over the other as a boss and a subordinate. And because of that, they, and they say, you're going to do this. We don't know exactly, but it could have been that. Here, they're setting up that if you want to be a servant, you can sell yourself to another person. Why did they do this? They may not have had any money. They may say, I can't fend for myself. I need somebody, kind of like the prodigal son. I can't feed myself. I'll go back over here and they can feed me. I know they got money, and I'll see if I can work for it. And that's what they did. And if you want to think of it as an apprenticeship, that's probably closer to what we think of as a slave. Now, the way the slave worked in the other part of the world, people would go and kidnap people, and it does today too, take them, and then they're their slaves. That's not what this is saying. Saying if you want a servant, you can go buy a servant. If somebody wants to become a servant to somebody, but it's for a particular period of time. Okay? 6 years. And then you're free to go. And
bartering.
It was bartering. It's like, okay, I'm on a job for 6 years. And he took them. He treated them family. Now, that didn't mean that they couldn't beat them, because they may not doing right or whatever. They need to teach them. Some people are just like today. You got workers that are great workers, and you got workers that aren't worth a flip. And you know, sometimes you'd like to beat them, but you can't. But not really. I'm just saying that you would say, man, why can't you get this? This is not working. So it's in the entire ancient world. It said people who work for others on the principle of servitude. It's hard for us to grasp that today because we got such a vast middle class. You got the very, very rich, and then you've got a big middle class that encompasses everything from poverty all the way up to the next level, which is almost the top level. And then you got the poverty level, everybody below poverty that can't even do anything. And I'm not saying it may be physical, it may be mental, it may be whatever that they have. But back then they didn't have that. Most of the time you were either very rich or very poor. There's no middle class much. Not like ours today. So they would sell themselves, or they would sell their children, or they would sell whatever. And it's going out already.